There are American soldiers who died in wars the United States says never happened. No medals, no folded flags, no official place of death. Not because the records were lost, because they were never allowed to exist. These men were not missing. They were erased. Their missions were planned in rooms without windows, approved without signatures, and carried out in places that did not appear on maps. If they survived, they were ordered to stay silent. If they didn't, their families were told nothing that could be verified. And the most disturbing part is this: the system that sent them there still exists. But to understand how America learned to fight wars without admitting them, we have to start with a story that was never supposed to be told at all. Most Americans believe wars begin with announcements, a speech, a resolution, a flag raised somewhere far away. Vietnam fits that story, at least on the surface. There was a front line, there were troop numbers, there were nightly news broadcasts. There were protests, draft cards, and names etched into black stone years later. But what most people never learned is that Vietnam was not one war. It was several wars stacked on top of each other. One of them was visible. The other was designed to be deniable. And the second one is where the records disappear. Because while Congress debated Vietnam and the public argued over it, small teams of Americans were already crossing borders they were not allowed to cross, fighting enemies the government denied existed in countries the United States insisted it was not fighting in: Laos, Cambodia. Parts of North Vietnam that officially did not exist to American voters. This was not a mistake. It was policy. But policy like this creates a problem. If a soldier dies in a place you deny being in, what do you tell the people waiting for him to come home? The answer was simple. You tell them nothing that can be checked. In the mid-1960s, the U.S. military began expanding a program so secret that even many generals did not know its full scope. It operated under a harmless-sounding name designed to blend into bureaucracy. MACV-SOG, Military Assistance Command Vietnam Studies and Observations Group. That name was intentional. It sounded academic, boring, administrative. In reality, it was a covert war machine. MACV-SOG units ran reconnaissance, sabotage, prisoner snatches, wiretaps, and assassinations deep inside enemy territory and across international borders. Their job was not to win battles. It was to expose weaknesses, provoke reactions, and disappear before anyone could ask questions. Their missions were classified above top secret. If they were captured, the United States would deny knowing who they were. If they were killed, the paperwork would say something else. Training accidents, equipment failures, non-hostile incidents, anything except the truth. And once this system was built, it didn't just accept risk, it depended on it. The soldiers chosen for these missions were not average troops. They were Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Recon Marines, CIA-linked operatives, men trained to survive alone, think independently, and follow orders without expecting recognition. But there was one detail they were not always told up front. If something went wrong, there would be no rescue. Cross-border missions were often run with radio silence windows so long that extraction could not be guaranteed. Helicopters would hover just outside denied airspace, listening, waiting, hoping for a signal that might never come. And if the signal didn't come, the mission would be scrubbed. Not because they didn't care, but because acknowledging the loss would acknowledge the war. Entire teams vanished this way. Some were listed as missing in action with no location attached. Others were quietly reclassified years later, once documents were partially declassified and language could be adjusted without headlines. Families were left with fragments. A uniform returned without explanation. A letter that said, "Classified." A promise that someday they would understand. Most never did. But here's where the story turns darker. Because Vietnam was only the rehearsal. By the time Vietnam ended, the United States had learned something dangerous. You could fight wars without political cost if you controlled visibility. No draft, no speeches, no headlines. So, the model continued. In Central America during the 1980s, U.S. operatives advised, armed, and guided forces in conflicts the government publicly framed as support roles. In Africa, small teams trained militias while officially denying involvement. In the Middle East, operations ran under intelligence authorities instead of military ones, allowing casualties to be classified differently or not counted at all. These were not mistakes or rogue actions. They were the evolution of a system that learned how to remove accountability. And the men sent into these shadows understood the rules. No recognition, no acknowledgement, no guarantees, only orders. But systems built on silence always leave something behind. And in this case, it was a trail of unresolved deaths. Today, there are still American families who do not know where their sons died. Not because the enemy hid the bodies, but because their own government classified the truth. Some records remain sealed, others were destroyed, some were never written. When journalists and historians began uncovering fragments decades later, they found something chilling. The language was careful, the dates were vague, the locations were missing. These men did not die heroically in official wars. They died doing what the country required while refusing to admit it required them at all. And that raises a final question that has never been answered. If a nation can send people to fight where no records exist, what else can it do without being seen? Because the most dangerous part of this story is not what happened back then. It's that the structure that made it possible was never dismantled. And silence, once perfected, rarely stays in the past. This is Untold America, where forgotten history speaks louder than headlines. Subscribe if you want to see the stories they tried to erase.